My father also played the accordion, so I joined. I think I learned pretty quickly, you know. So I think from the beginning I felt that maybe this is for me.
At 78, Benny Andersson stepped back into the light in a way that felt both surprising and long overdue. For decades, he let the music speak louder than any interview, letting melodies and arrangements tell the story of a life that was as public as it was private. From a small boy in Stockholm with an accordion in his hands to a global figure behind some of pop's most enduring songs, Benny's path was never just about fame. It was about music, family, love, and loss. And, as he has now admitted in a quiet, human way, about a truth that involved the woman who shared so many of those early years on stage and off. Born on December 16, 1946, in the Vasastan district of Stockholm, Benny grew up in a household where music was ordinary and expected. His father, Gösta Andersson, worked as a civil engineer, and his mother, Leila, kept the home. Music arrived early in the family through his grandfather Ephraim and his father, both accordion players, that would form the first layers of his musical sense. The first records he treasured ranged from classic European singers to Elvis Presley, and even as a child, he was pulled by the sound of piano lines and infectious rhythms. That mix of folk, pop, and early rock planted a seed that would grow into the style people came to recognize as his. By the age of 10, Benny had a piano and taught himself to play. School felt less like a calling than music did, and by 15 he had left formal education to perform in youth clubs. It was in those early years that his personal life and his musical life intertwined. He met Christina Granlund, became a young father, and recorded the first sketches of what would later become a career. He began to write songs, play covers, and slowly moved from being a performer into someone who shaped the sound of a group. That development came to the fore when he joined the Hep Stars in 1964 as a keyboardist. The band broke through with the hit Cadillac, and Benny's songwriting soon supplied the group with hits that made him a name to watch in Sweden. He was not only a musician for hire, he was the engine that turned the band's sound into something distinct, sunny, melodic, and deeply catchy. It was in the swirl of Swedish pop in the mid to late 1960s that Benny's life pivoted toward the people who would complete ABBA. In 1966, he met Björn Ulvaeus, and the two began writing together. They had early success with songs for other artists and competed in Sweden's music festivals. In that same scene, Benny met Annie Frid Lyngstad, Frida, and later Agnetha Faltskog. Musical partnerships grew into friendships and then into two romantic partnerships, Björn with Agnetha and Benny with Frida. Those relationships gave ABBA a human, intimate edge. They were not just four musicians on a poster, they were two couples who shared harmonies on stage and meals off stage. Those connections would become an essential part of the ABBA myth and, as time would show, a source of both inspiration and pain. Early collaborations among the four began informally. They sang together on a beach in Cyprus in 1970 for United Nations soldiers, a spontaneous moment that in retrospect looked like a seed planted for something bigger. By the end of that year, they were performing small stage shows and writing together. Benny and Björn's writing partnership grew stronger. Agnetha and Frida's voices added a unique texture that changed everything. Initial successes like Hedge Gamla Man raised a small wave of attention, and the group kept refining their sound. They tried out different names, styles, and arrangements, and by 1973, their single Ring Ring showed a new production confidence that hinted at international potential. It was also the moment when their manager began using a shorter, punchier name, ABBA, an acronym of their first names and a brand identity that would soon be recognized all over the world. Victory at the Eurovision Song Contest in 1974 with Waterloo changed the scale of everything. It opened doors across Europe and beyond, creating a momentum that led to a stream of hits through the 1970s. Benny was central to the group's musical identity. He helped craft a sound that married strong melodies with multi-layered production, and he and Björn wrote songs that fit the unique blend of their two singers. Hits like Mamma Mia, SOS, Money, 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 and especially Dancing Queen turned the band into a global phenomenon. Tours filled stadiums and TV shows, albums topped charts, and the group became a cultural touchstone for millions. Yet even as the glitter of costumes and the appeal of catchy choruses swept audiences up, life inside ABBA carried contradictions. On stage, the chemistry seemed seamless. Behind the scenes, the pressures of fame and non-stop work showed. The two real-life couples that had enchanted fans began to unpick. Bjorn and Agnetha, married in 1971, started to grow apart as touring, and the spotlight took its toll. Benny and Frida moved in together in the early 1970s, married in 1978, and later the pressures of celebrity and differing paths took a toll on their relationship too. In public, the band kept delivering hits and ambitious projects, albums like Arrival and Voulez-Vous, massive tours that even survived a bomb scare or heavy rain. But by the end of the 1970s and into the early 1980s, the fractures became harder to hide. The breakups were not neat or simple. Benny and Frida separated around 1980, and their divorce was finalized in 1981. Benny soon married Mona Norklit that same year. Bjorn and Agnetha also separated, and while the band continued to work through the early 1980s, the chemistry that had once driven the songs was changing. Their final studio album, The Visitors, reflected that new reality in its themes. Songs dealing with failed relationships, political unease, aging, and loss of innocence. The music had matured, and so had the people who made it. By 1982, after recording a few more tracks and releasing a final compilation with new singles, ABBA's public activity dwindled. Their last television appearances and their final live performance together in December 1982 closed a chapter that had been spectacular and, for the people inside it, often private and painful. After the split, the four members walked very different paths. Bjorn and Benny continued their songwriting partnership and built new successes on stage and screen, chess, theatrical work, and the musical Mamma Mia, which became a huge international success and later a film. Benny and Bjorn's professional relationship remained a creative island that grew beyond the band. Agnetha and Frida both retreated in ways that the public found hard to reconcile with the larger-than-life personas fans remembered. Agnetha battled stage fright, a fear of flying, and profound feelings of shyness. Personal losses, including her parents' deaths and difficult relationships, pushed her toward a more secluded life in the Swedish countryside. For a long time, she avoided music and the public entirely, only later re-emerging sporadically in new albums and appearances. Frida's story was also marked by complex family history and later tragedies, a difficult childhood, marriages and divorces, the loss of loved ones and grief that led her to step away from the limelight and find solace in faith and quiet life abroad. For years, talk of a reunion sounded like a headline from rumor pages. Would ABBA ever sing together again? Offers came and went, including astronomical sums that the group declined. The members chose restraint, honoring what the band had been, and avoiding a comeback that might cheapen what they had created. And yet the music lingered, beloved by a new generation as well as the old. That steady affection helped make two different kinds of returns possible: a theatrical revival in the form of their music, and eventually a renewed collaboration in the studio. The first public crack in the long silence came quietly and then built into something definitive. What began as a plan to record a couple of new songs turned into a full album and a bold new way to bring the band to the stage. Voyage, released in 2021, was the result. Fresh songs, careful production, and a sense that these four people could still make music together, even if the dynamic had shifted. Alongside that album came an innovative concert experience, ABBA Voyage, which opened in London in 2022. The show did not rely on live performance in the traditional sense. Instead, it used state-of-the-art digital avatars of the group as they looked in their 1970s prime, backed by a live band in a custom-built arena. The project was both a tribute to their past and a bold step into the technological future, and it succeeded in reintroducing their songs to audiences around the world, while offering longtime fans a way to revisit the past. Over time, ABBA Voyage proved to be more than a gimmick. It became a cultural and economic landmark. Hundreds of thousands of fans bought tickets, and the production brought significant income into the local economy. For the audiences, it was a deeply emotional experience, not simply nostalgia, but a way to see how songs written decades earlier could still move a room. The show even evolved, refreshing the set list to keep returning visitors engaged. For the band members, Voyage represented a way to step back into public view on their own terms, not by recreating the exact conditions of the past, but by honoring it with new technology and a sense of careful stewardship. It was in that spirit of measured return that Benny Andersson and Frida Lyngstad made a small but powerful public appearance on May 27, 2025. For fans, it was a rare sight. The two, who had once married and then gone their separate ways, stood in the VIP balcony of the Voyage Arena in London. Their presence was unannounced, and when they were seen, the crowd erupted. Frida, dressed elegantly and softly, took the microphone first. She smiled and thanked the audience, speaking simply about the long arc of their career and the years that had passed. "I love you very much. Thank you for all your support over the years. It's hard to imagine it's nearly 50 years ago." She laughed and mentioned she was turning 80, a small human moment that drew warm applause. Then Benny stepped forward. Instead of diving into a heavy, formal speech, he chose humor. A light line about two men walking into a bar, and the room broke into laughter as Frida chuckled beside him. It felt like an honest moment of ease between two people who had shared an intense life together. To many watching, Benny's appearance that night felt like more than a publicity cameo. It read as a quiet confirmation of something the band had never fully declared in public, that while love had shifted and marriages had ended, respect and affection had endured. Over the years, Benny had said simply, "Frida and I are still friends," and Frida had spoken plainly about how they had grown out of each other. Those lines, brief and straightforward, carried the weight of years of conversations, tears, and decisions. For a man who had often let melody say what he would not put into print, standing beside his former partner and making a joke before a cheering crowd was its own sort of confession, a way of saying that the story did not end in bitterness, but in a matured, respectful companionship. The rest of their lives continued in ways that honored their shared legacy, while also moving forward. Benny and Bjorn kept writing and producing. Musicals like Chess and stage adaptations of Mamma Mia continued their long life on stages around the world. In a neat twist of timing, 2025 saw both Mamma Mia and Chess running on Broadway at the same time, an unusual and fitting tribute to a partnership that had survived so much. Those shows were proof that the creative muscle built between the two songwriters remained strong, capable of connecting audiences across generations and languages. Yet perhaps the most human part of Benny's recent confirmations is that they do not attempt to paint the past as flawless or to erase the real pain that once existed. The story of ABBA is messy and full of real life: early love, career triumphs, divorces that hurt, children who grew up in the glare, and private tragedies that shaped how the members moved through the world. Benny's choice to appear with Frida, to laugh and to speak plainly, suggests a piece with that complexity. It is not a tidy reunion of hearts, so much as a faithful recognition of shared history, of music that once bound them together and still, in small ways, keeps them speaking kindly to one another. There is a lesson in that for anyone who watches. Fame and fortune are not shields against the ordinary pains of life. Sometimes they amplify those pains, but time can also bring perspective. Benny's new openness, his willingness to step forward and acknowledge the human truth of those relationships, shows a kind of emotional maturity that matches the musical maturity he has long displayed. He confirms not a scandalous secret, but an honest reality, that what they had was genuine, that it changed, and that what remains between them today is respect, a shared history, and a continued devotion to the music that defined a generation. As ABBA Voyage continues to play, and as stage productions keep the songs alive for new audiences, Benny Andersson remains a figure who has moved through private heartbreak and public triumph and come out on the other side with an artist's humility. At 78, his confession was not scandalous or sensational. It was a simple, human statement that the past was real, that the relationships were meaningful, and that even after divorce and years apart, there can be warmth, laughter, and an enduring bond. For fans old and new, that truth is as powerful as any chorus, honest, unmistakable, and somehow deeply comforting. In the end, the music keeps telling the story. But now, Benny has added his voice to that narrative in a small but important way. He has shown that time changes people and relationships, yet does not necessarily erase the affection that once existed. His appearance beside Frida and his gentle, joking words confirmed something many fans may have suspected, but few had heard him say, that their shared past still matters, that respect survived the breakups, and that the truth about her, about Frida, about their life together, is not a tabloid headline, but a quiet history of love, music, and life lived fully. As the lights dim on one song and the orchestra prepares for the next, that human truth lingers in the air, carrying on the very notes that first brought them together.